We're looking at here is a RHEL 9 system. The real kind of key to networking on RHEL these days is moving away from things like the network script files that we traditionally use, IFCFG configuration files, and instead into network manager native things. So the network manager command is NMCLI and it supports bash completion. So if you hit tab a couple times, it'll tell you like what the component commands are. So I could do things like look at the connection that I have on the machine. We can see that this machine has three interfaces, two Ethernet interfaces and one loopback. We can also do an NMCLI dev. It'll show me the devices that are connected to the machine. So in the event that I didn't have an activated device, but it was present on the machine, we could see it here in the list of devices, but it wouldn't necessarily be reflected over in the connections.
A nice note is that those connection names can be a little friendlier. Sometimes you'll see wired connection instead of E3, right? Just something that's useful, right? Something that you couldn't do easily in the old days that you can do now under Network Manager.
That plugs into things like the graphical network tools that are coming with desktop interfaces so that you can actually pick off the list with a more human friendly name. So, if I wanted to disable one of these connections, first let me show you using our IP command that I have two different Ethernet connections, ENP0S3, which has a couple of IP addresses assigned to it, and EN8, which also has an IP address connected to it. So if I wanted to disable ENP0S8, I'm going to NMCLI connection or con down S8. It's successfully disabled the connection. If I look at IPA, right down at the bottom under ENP0S8, we used to have a bunch of IP information. Not there anymore because we disabled it. And if we want to turn it back on, we can connection up it. And this is configured via DHCP. So when I do the connection up, it'll actually do a DHCP lease negotiation automatically. When I look at the IP information again, we can see its IP address is back. And we'll take a look at some of those additional configuration parameters in the deeper dive. To give us a taste of what we're going to see in the deeper dive, I'd also like to show you the additional connection information that we have for every configured connection. If I do an NMCLI connection show and I tell it the name of the connection that I want, it'll actually give me this list of parameters, and it's huge. These are all the configuration parameters that one can change associated with this network connection. And so you could see things like the interface name. So some of this gets auto-populated from system information. Down a little bit further, this IPv4 method, right? So remember, I said that this was a DHCP address obtaining interface, and this is why, because the IPv4 method says automatically obtain the network address. And Nate's going to take us through in the deeper dive on how we might change that to something else. You also get some additional parameters like IPv4 network stuff that we'll see a little bit later. And there's also the IPv6 network stuff that you can change. And all of these changes and all this configuration is stored in a backend database used by Network Manager. So as we're making changes with NMCI, it's actually making those changes to our system as well as persisting them in the backend database so that if we boot the machine or turn the interface off and back on again, it comes back with the same parameters that we left it with. All right, so that's a little bit on NMCLI. Nate, any words of wisdom?
Embrace the NMCLI. I came from the old world of network scripts as well, and it was a little bit to figure out how NMCLI was changing things. But once you get used to it, a pretty nice setup.
Yeah, one of the things I think that as we were discussing the show that came up is people struggle with making the edits. They used to make edits to a file and then apply those changes with an IF down, IF up with the interface. NMCLI does the same tasks, but instead of editing a file, you're just executing a few commands, which from
Hmm.
a scripting perspective or an
Yes.
initial setup is actually more automatable than stream editing a file and hoping that you wrote the right regular expression. to change a file.